Podcaster, entertainer, philosopher, comedian, Mike Usenick. Usenick Unleashed!
Oh, good, man. No worries. I'm just chilling.
All right, we're good. So Dan, it's been a while. I haven't seen you since the great pandemic of 2019.
Yeah, it's definitely been, what's going on, fucking 5 years or some shit now?
Dude, time's flying, dude.
It really is, dude. It's been, like, going by in the blink of an eye, damn near. A lot's happened in them 5 years for sure.
I know, because the last I talked to you, you were playing bass for the breathing process. You had just started, I think, was when I last saw you. Now you're in both that and how do you pronunciate the other band's name? The Canev.
The Convalescence.
Okay.
Um, I'm actually not technically, with the breathing process anymore. That band's actually currently, the best to my knowledge, they're going through, like, a little bit of a rebranding, with their label, and they're, looking to release another new album, and I haven't heard any of the music yet, but I'm still in close contact with their drummer. He's one of my absolute best. I love all the guys. All of them are some of my best friends in the world, but Brian's the one I talk to the most, and it seems to be going pretty good.
That's good. That's good, dude. And the convalescence. Hopefully, I pronunciated that right. I'm awful. What are you the original member of the convalescence, or did you come later?
I came a little bit later. The band was actually formed in 2011.
Damn, dude.
And technically, the only original member of the band is our vocalist Keith. He's been with the band for all 14 years now.
That
I
seems
would-
that seems well popular amongst the black metal community, though. Like bands only having one original member and shit.
yeah, it's definitely kind of like a band dead sort of scenario where it's democratic, of course, to an extent. Everybody gets to voice their opinions and kind of give their vote on stuff. But at the end of the day, like if it's gonna make sense and if Keith can make it work, then we're gonna go fucking do it.
You guys just got back from Germany, didn't you?
The band went to Germany and either I think it was 2021, I believe. They went with Carnifex, Chelsea Grin, and Varials, and that was a really sick tour, from my understanding. I wasn't actually with the band then; that was when I was still with the Breathing Process. But I was on tour with the Breathing Process while they were on that tour. We were kind of communicating a little bit. I've been friends with all the members of that band for about since it was 2019 that we toured with them for the first time.
Damn, dude. Didn't you just tour with them in another country recently? I thought you said something about that.
Yeah, this past January we went to Japan actually, which was sick. We did 3 shows in Japan. You know the band Obituary, I imagine.
Fuck yeah.
Uh, one of my all-time favorite bands. I've been jamming that band since I was damn near a kid, and it was really really cool to get to go with those guys. They were some of the nicest, most humble human beings I'd ever met in my life, and there was even a moment where we were kind of gonna, because the second show we played in Tokyo, there wasn't like a whole lot of green room space. So we were trying to like kind of pack away and like give them more room. And they came in and they said, "No, no, no, you guys get in here. Come on, we're sharing this. This is for all of us."
Dude, that's fucking cool. And Japan's beautiful, dude.
Dude, Japan was that's actually been like one of my dream locations to even just go to and visit since I was a kid.
Mhm.
So getting to go over there specifically to play death metal with one of my favorite bands in the world was really, really, absolutely one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had in my life. And the first night we went, we actually had a day off, and we ended up going to Nara Park with our showrunner and the guy who brought us over there. Got to check out a lot of the old Japanese Buddhist temples and stuff that have. I think the city itself of Nara was first founded in like 447 or something like that. So it was really cool getting to see all that stuff standing after 1700 years. And then that evening, we actually got invited to go to a little American-owned bar in Osaka where we were staying at the time, and we got in there, and John, the vocalist from Obituary, came over and he grabbed us by the shoulders and he said, "You guys are not paying for a single drink on this whole tour." He took care of all of our tabs, and we ended up stumbling drunkenly through the streets of Osaka with Obituary trying to find our hotel. We ended up getting mixed up, went to the wrong hotel, had to take taxis back to the right hotel. It was absolutely magical, if I'm being honest.
That sounds like a death metal equivalent of like Spinal Tap. Like fucking
It really was for a little bit. It was really, really cool.
That's amazing, dude. And only you would go to Japan and then eat at an American restaurant.
Well, we did because our vocalist has a very, very severe like shellfish and fish allergy.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if you know this about Japan or not. Of course, they're super, super heavily in this like the seafood kind of cuisine, to the point that you can't get a pizza even in Japan without them putting clam juice into the sauce. We had gone to a 7-Eleven just trying to help our vocalist out because he's also he's like he's band dad. He's doing all of the financial stuff, handling all of like the talking to venues on our behalf and stuff like that. So he had a lot going on for him. So we tried to help him out. We'd walk down to the store for, to get some stuff for ourselves and then get him some stuff also. We tried to find him. We found some little donuts that we were like, oh, there's no way there's anything bad in here. We get it back to him. He's reading the ingredients and it's like may contain mackerel. So he could only eat the McDonald's and Taco Bell specifically, which the McDonald's and Taco Bell in Japan just hits different. They do it. It's weird to say, but they do American food better than Americans do. It's
Well,
absolutely
here's why though, Dan. The reason why is because in certain parts of the world, there's ingredients that are banned. So they have to find a new way to create that food, making it more like healthier actually for fast food, which is weird. I think in Switzerland, they have like a sit down restaurant, McDonald's.
yeah. And a lot of like the McDonald's and stuff around the world, they'll even serve you beer and shit like that. It's vastly different. They don't have a lot of the same preservatives and stuff that we use, so they do it right over there. And also the authentic Japanese ramen, my favorite fucking thing in the world, dude.
Don't they use a different kind of wheat than we do?
Maybe I'm not actually sure, but there's a good possibility of it. I'd believe you if you said so.
Because I know in Italy they have a diet rich in like wheat, and people are like, "Well, that can't be healthy," but they use durum wheat, which takes the body longer to process.
Oh, I was not aware, but it definitely, they definitely use different ingredients to what we do, and it definitely works out because they have a lot of different items as well. And it's like for instance, at the Taco Bell, we got a burrito that somehow they got a tube of cheese directly into the middle of a burrito perfectly. It was just there. It was perfectly. It was ridiculous. Absolutely wonderful. The food was probably one of my favorite parts of going over there for sure.
I wonder though, like in Japan and areas like that that are rich in like fish and like seafood and like shellfish. In America, shellfish and fish in general is like a number one allergy next to peanuts. I wonder why certain parts of the world don't have the same allergy problems at the same percentage we do.
I'm not sure. I've heard a little bit about how it may just be kind of our diets overall and the way that we've eaten now in this country for the last 70, 80 years. Because you go back and look 100 years, there weren't quite as many allergies and not in the same way that there are now today. So
Mhm.
it could very well be that we kind of developed that ourselves just by eating the crap that we do. Because to be honest, like Americans, we eat like crap. It's cheap. It's super super cheap as shit, but we eat crap.
Well, what's crazy is we want to claim to be like the best country, but we are actually the best country in diabetes. Like we're number one. We're number one in heart disease. Like we're great. We're doing great at that shit.
Dude, at the top tier on everything, man. We're gonna die first, and then potentially also like you might get blown up because we're just a little ridiculous like that. You know how it goes.
That's fucking crazy, dude. And I know that your lyrics and stuff, like in past bands, I don't know about Convalescence because I'll be honest, I've only listened to a couple songs. I try to support, bro, but like there's so many fucking people to support, so I don't get to listen to whole albums anymore. Uh,
Mhm.
but black metal in general has always covered the lyrical contents of like Satan and shit, and it's more so to like it's a very controversial topic, and I love talking about it. Do you guys cover similar lyrical content, or did you defer away from that to not be a typical black metal band?
A little bit. I definitely wouldn't consider us to be black metal. There's actually a lot of controversy surrounding the band specifically because we do corpse paint and full body paint and
Mhm.
fake blood and all that kind of stuff, but we don't really play black metal, to be honest. There are some hints of some bits of black metal in certain songs, but for the most part, we're a death metal, deathcore,
Mhm.
metalcore kind of bass band.
And a little bit of melodic death metal in there at certain points.
Yeah, there's a lot of mellow death in there. We have keys on everything. We have big orchestral tracks and really, really, really big, rich melodies with a lot of stuff. Um, at the same time, we'll turn around and play a super slam and breakdown that's going to beat your face in, and then we'll stomp you in when we're fucking done with it.
See, that's what I thought. You guys were more of a death metal from what I was listening to, but the makeup kind of makes it seem like black metal. But I mean, that'd be like calling Kiss black metal, I guess.
Yeah, and to be honest, there are a lot of people in the scene, and like the certain promoters and agents and that kind of thing that really kind of dismiss us specifically because that we're a band that plays death metal and deathcore, but we wear the paint. Like there are a lot of people who do not like the fact that we wear the paint, but we don't play black metal. There are a lot of some of those elitist people that they consider that to be blasphemous against like the originators of the whole corpse paint thing, Mayhem and Dark Funeral and all those guys
Isn't
like
it
that.
weird that people that made fame on being blasphemous are mad and thinking other people are being blasphemous towards them?
Yes, I personally think that that's funny, and anymore, like that's kind of the new motto of the band is that we're just going to kind of do whatever and whatever we want to do, and if it doesn't work out, if people don't like it, hey, you know what? You may not like it, but the dude down the street may think it's the coolest fucking thing in the world. Because we do get a lot of hate for the antics and stuff. Because we also we do the corpse paint and the blood, and we wear like clothes like gothic style clothes with like a lot of chains and leather straps and stuff like that. And people will be really really against that kind of thing. But we also we have one part of one of our songs specifically in Undead Swarm. We'll bring out a little medical cart that has our mascot on it, and his name's Timmy. He's this kind of a shitty little corpse that we hang off the front of it and cover him in blood. And we bring him out. And Keith will make a little speech about how this is Timmy. He lives in the back of our bus. He's a piece of shit. He does all of our drugs. He steals all of our money, wrecks our hotel rooms, smokes all of our weed, drinks all the beer, and he's never paid for anything. He never contributes, and then we get the whole crowd to scream "Fuck you, Timmy!" And then we've got a like a little pile of bloody organs that we say we ripped these out of Timmy. You can grow your own Timmy at home if you do things the right way, and we throw body parts out to people as like little souvenirs for remembering having a lot of fun with the convalescence. We are musicians and we are playing in some songs some really complex music, but at the same time we kind of all view ourselves a little bit more as entertainers necessarily than just getting up there and playing the music. So if we're putting on a good show and having fun and the crowd's having a good time, that's really what we care about at the end of the day.
So you
um
guys are pretty much shock metal.
yeah, a little bit. We like to bill ourselves as kind of like a like a horror or like a slasher movie but in a death metal band kind of thing. We have these mic stands that are like really grotesque skeletons that have been like all kind of mishmashed together and made to look a certain way. A guy who does movie props really knocked it out of the park and made some really cool mic stands for us. And we're getting our drummer right now to actually do his drum rack covered in that kind of stuff as well. And that's kind of the overall goal is to just have body parts and all kinds of crazy, bloody, nasty shit all over everything.
That's
We
kind
like
of
to get gross.
that's kind of reminiscent of like your Guar, your Wasp, those
Yeah.
kind of bands, which I love that. I love a good shock because, like, throughout my life, man, I've listened to like the Alice Coopers, the Marilyn Mansons. Like, it's hard to shock people nowadays, and it's hard to shock when like your guys' way of shocking is by just pissing off black metal musicians by wearing corpse paint.
That's definitely part of it. We definitely we tried to emulate a little bit of like what Gore does, that kind of thing. We have military grade squirt guns that we fill up with blood at certain venues that let us do it, and we'll shoot blood all over the crowd, and of course we throw the organs at them. And we actually did this. Oh shit! When was it? It was either June or July, or no, I'm sorry. It might have actually been September. I think it was that we did it. We played it's called Land of Illusion. It's like a theme park, a horror-based theme park with a bunch of haunted attractions here in Ohio. And we went up there and we got to play a full hour and a half set. And we actually brought a couple of extras with us and had them kind of running around the stage in masks, pretending to stab each other and fight each other, and throwing extra organs and like candy and stuff like that out of the crowd, because it was like a Halloween based kind of show.
Dude, that's fucking cool as shit.
Yeah,
I,
it's a lot of fun.
I love Halloween, and I actually heard a quote recently, and it made me laugh because it's very like a controversial quote. I think you'd like. It was said by Anton LaVey. If you're familiar with that figure, Anton Zandor LaVey was the founder of the Church of Satan.
Okay, I was gonna say I know the name, but I didn't know him right offhand.
He said in an interview, he's like, I find it great that Christians picked a day out of the year where they too can worship the devil.
Yep. Yep. It just goes to show that everybody's they're saying one thing over here and saying another thing over there. It's everywhere, man.
Well, recently I talked to a girl on here. She's a Satanist, and it's weird because like people misunderstand what certain people's beliefs are just by a name. And if you actually just sit down and talk to people, you realize that they're not choosing the side of evil. They just have a different view of the same thing that you believe, or different. It's not even anything related to you.
Yeah. The way I've described it to other people that have questioned like being in this band or just being into like darker themes in the world, it's like, well, I think more positively about what people consider to be negative things. Like I love horror movies and slasher films and psychological horrors especially. So it all kind of wraps around and fits right into that kind of thing.
For me, though, it's more so the duality of nature, dude. Like, no matter what mythology you follow, if any, or if you want to call it a theology, you got to realize that you can't just go with the good, dude. Like, it's the duality of life. Like, in order
Yeah.
for there to be good, there has to be evil, and you have to like acknowledge and embrace the darkness in order to see the light, dude. Like,
Yeah, and a lot of the times the more dark and evil or more perverse stuff is usually the most fun stuff anyways, and the most
yeah,
interesting. And I think that's kind of why we've all gravitated towards that.
yeah, and also it kind of goes back to the Aleister Crowley thing: "Do as thou wilt." Do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. Like,
Hmm.
if you enjoy it, fucking do it. Like, who cares what society says is good or bad? That's just a matter of interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your favorite bands nowadays, dude?
Nowadays, I've always been a super huge power metal head, which a lot of people find that to be like kind of interesting or like shocking a little bit, because I love death metal. I've listened to death metal most of my life. I love death metal, black metal, all that kind of like heavier stuff. But there's just something special about power metal bands. I've been jamming a lot of Windrose here lately. Is one of my absolute favorites. Elvady is another one. Arion. A lot of just I really like really big rich melodies, and I'm also just a big fan of just straight basic four on the floor kind of like heavy, just easy consistent beats, and then they break off into the quick double kick, and the pedaling chuggy kind of guitar stuff. It's all so much fun. That, and I've always really been into more theatrical kind of stuff. So when a band comes on wearing full dwarven armor and like a full set piece, and they're all dancing around and pretending like they're dwarves digging in the mountains of Erebor, like, come on, that's badass as fuck. I love it.
I actually saw a band the other day. I forget who it is off the top of my head, but they're a power metal band, but they're a Irish folk power metal band. And they sing like Celtic, pagan, mythological stories.
I
And
love that kind of shit.
and I'm like, fuck yeah. I forget what it was, but what's weird is by the way, my brain goes all over the place. We're gonna be talking about all kinds of shit because I love
No, you're good, man.
um, I noticed something that's weird is like when you look into mythology and like all the different stories, you get a lot of Greek. Like you got Hercules, Disney even made it. You got a lot of Norse, but you don't really hear a lot of Celtic. They're them making movies out of Celtic stories, and I wonder why
Mhm.
that is. Even Egyptians have theirs stories told, but like when it comes to Celts, you don't hear any movies about the Tuatha Dé Danann and the fucking any of their other gods like Cernunnos or any of that. And I wonder why.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is a lot of those Nordic and Norse religions have actually been very heavily stomped on and kind of thrown aside by Christian, especially during the Crusades, was just kind of lost to history for the most part. So
Mhm.
if you're not already into that kind of stuff, or don't come from those countries that already had that as like an old backbone to like their old religions, then you may not be privy to all that really cool and rich lore that's involved in all that stuff.
See, there's like you said, there's a lot that's not known because, like Cernunnos, for instance, nobody has any stories about him, but he was a very declarated deity because they found pictures of him everywhere. But we know about the Tuatha Dé. I don't know if you know that mythological cycle.
I don't actually. I'm not familiar with that one.
It is the Celtic cycle. All right. Ireland was founded or had five different, I think 5 or 6 different groups of people that went there. The first group was the descendants of Noah, and they ended up getting wiped out due to famine and disease and shit, and also like different animals that inhabited the area. One of them being the Fomorians, which is giants that is headed by this one-eyed giant by the name of Baelor. And you can actually hear these characters' names. They're mentioned in Hellboy 2, even though it has nothing to really do with their mythology.
Hmm.
But after they died off, years later, a group, I forget their name, but they were also descendants of Noah, went there and they inhabited the land. And then eventually the Tuatha Dé showed up, and they were supposedly these godlike warriors. And they went in and they fought, and they ended up taking up half of Ireland. And then they eventually, long story short, took over all of Ireland. And then the current people that live in Ireland's descendants showed up, and the Tuatha Dé just surrendered and went to the fairy realm, which is pretty much their heaven.
Hmm.
And it's believed that the Tuatha Dé was a real people that inhabited Ireland, just their stories have been exaggerated, kind of like other belief systems where like it's historic, but it's also very mythological.
Yeah, because I mean that was also back in the day when a lot of those stories were passed down by fireside talks and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So it was always interpreted a different way, and then the other, the next guy that would tell the story would interpret things a little bit differently and would give his different spin on it. So over the years, of course, things were exaggerated and turned into maybe not exactly what they were, but it always makes it more interesting.
Yeah, and back then, gods weren't this creature in the sky at that time. It was just people that showed supernatural abilities.
Yeah.
They would view them as gods, kind of like in Greece and areas like that. Are you familiar with the ancient astronaut theory? I like that one.
A little bit. I can't remember his name, but the oh, the ancient king, was it of the Mayans? I think it was shoot, Quetzalcoatl, I think, or
Mhm.
something along that nature. Yeah, that he had come down in his starship and had shown the people how to build large scale pyramids and structures to help identify different landing zones and things for when he would inevitably return at some point. Is my very basic and smooth brain understanding of the whole thing.
Here's my understanding. It wasn't Maya, the theory that I heard, but there's like with anything, there's various theories of various things. But the belief is the one that I heard was from Sumer, the Sumerian text that they found. They believed in Enki and Enlil came from the skies from their divine place, which many believe was a different planet.
Hmm.
And they created a slave race to mine for gold. And that's what we are. And they pretty much created mankind using magic clay. And it's weird because the Sumerians didn't just come from the sky, they came from the water.
Okay.
And there's also an Egyptian belief where their gods came from the sky and the water. So a lot of people are thinking that we misinterpreted extraterrestrial beings visiting us with being divine because we didn't have any better way to grasp what was happening. Because if you look at the Sumerian tablets, they actually show our entire cosmos that we found out later on was legit.
Hmm. Yeah, the way that I mean, big man comes down from the sky. Oh, he must be God.
Yeah.
Not having any kind of idea or even inkling that, like, oh, this could be someone from a different race or a different planet potentially. It was all, like, oh, they must be gods, and the sky bearers and all that kind of stuff.
And even back then, though, is people didn't, everybody had their own creation story of how mankind was put here. However, back then, due to them being just knowing their areas and stuff, there was just gods of certain areas. There wasn't a god of everybody. There was just gods of certain areas. Like Yahweh
Yeah.
was the god of the Israelites. Enki was the god of the Sumerians. And then you had the Pharaoh, which that's a long fucking lineage, but they believe their Pharaoh was a god, um, which is interesting. And what's crazy is like even the evil deities, evilness didn't come until later when the Christian crusades and shit came through, because Cernunnos and Pan were the main gods of like Greece and Ireland, where the crusades went through and destroyed all the Celtic beliefs. But he was a horned deity, so the belief is that they turned him red and made him evil and made it seem like they were worshiping the devil when it was actually Pan or Cernunnos.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of been like my belief for a long time now. Is even with like the Christian religion, it's like, I mean, how do we know that actually Lucifer was really the bad guy in the story? Because at the end of the day, history is written by the conquerors.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it could very simply be that this particular sect of people that decided to sit down and finally write out the Christian Bible had decided that this group of people or this particular person in this story was the evil one because he was the one who was against them.
As far as
It's
my understanding, though, Lucifer and Satan was actually both misinterpreted as actual beings when the scribes were writing in a kind of like an esoteric way where they used a lot of symbolism. And actually, Lucifer meant morning star, which was Venus when the sun hits
mhm.
the brightest time of the day. They used that to symbolize different people, really. And Satan was just the adversary, one who is against the king.
Yeah,
Um, So it's weird to me because people will say Lucifer is this evil being, when in the end of the day, it just means morning star. And even Yeshua, who Jesus, identified himself as the same exact thing.
yeah. That he was just like another version of a deity in a way, the son of God and all that. And he had come down to give his life for the sins of all people and all that kind of thing. But it's I mean, like, that kind of stuff is all it's all good and well for stories of trying to make people be good and try
Yeah.
to help them to better themselves. But at the same time, I see it as the earliest means of trying to control an entire globe of people with the simple fear of, hey, you don't know what happens when you die. It's super scary. We can tell you what happens when you die. If you do everything this way, you go to a magical land where you live forever with your creator. If you do things anything other than that way, you go to this awful, terrible, these nine stages of hell for all of the bad and worst people in the world, and you live in eternal torment, and it's always pain and it's always bad. So I mean, it's when there's no real means of researching that or knowing what's actually happening, that sounds pretty good. Like, oh
Well,
shit, I'm gonna go with the guy that's not gonna damn me for all of eternity.
it's weird because like they're not the only. It's not the only religion that did it, but they did it in a weird way because like as I mentioned earlier, ancient Egyptians, they believe that Horus Ra was just the pharaoh. They believe the Pharaoh was their god, so they used that religion as a means for mind control and for controlling the vast majority. And I find it weird that Christianity, and I love all my friends and family that are Christians. They're actually, most of the people I know are good people, but there are really bad ones too that give them a bad name. So I'm not trying to say all Christians are this way, but Christianity is the one religion where they control people using a god instead of a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all comes back down to that idea of, there's this big magical higher power that created you, and because of the fact that he created you, you owe him this certain amount of allegiance. And if you don't give him that allegiance, then he's angry and wrathful and will destroy entire cities and civilizations based on that. When really what was probably happening is, like wild, earthly events, hurricanes and earthquakes and things like that. But it was always interpreted as, oh, the gods are angry with us, so we have to redirect our entire society to make sure that we don't make him angry again. And in the yeah, when it comes to like more Central American religions and things like that, it got to the point of, cutting people's hearts out and sacrificing tens of thousands of people over a long period of time.
Well, what's really nuts though is like if you actually, and I like talking mythology. I know you do too, as a sense of like storytelling. But when it comes to like even the Old Testament, bro, a lot of that you can go back in time before the Hebrew scribes wrote all that and find stories that are similar. Like in Samaria, they talked about, or in Summer, sorry, in the Sumerian texts, they talked about the Epic of Gilgamesh, which
Hmm.
Gilgamesh was the leader at the time, and he went to go to this well that gave him like I think eternal life or whatever. And the guy that was at that well had survived a major flood where he had to load up a boat. And I'm like with two of each animal, and it's pretty much Noah's story, but it predates by like a long time. And then there's another story from the same era that talks about this woman who planted a tree, and within it this beautiful tree grew, but in it was a serpent and Lilith. This is the earliest story about Lilith. Lilith was inside of this tree, and Gilgamesh scared her away and chopped down the tree, restoring the civilization. Like, it's a crazy fucking thing, dude.
Yeah. You'll hear a lot of Christians, and I'm not in any way bashing like Christians themselves. I do believe that organized religions is one of the things that's destroying the fabric of society. That is just me, of course, personally. But there are a lot of similarities in the story of Christianity. Like you had mentioned, Horus. I mean, Horus himself, he was a carpenter. He was born to a virgin. He even spent the time out in the desert and had visions. Almost the exact same story as Jesus Christ, almost as if somebody had just cherry picked all of the best parts of all the religions that they knew of and created one big, massive religion to contain the entire populace.
That, and also it's easier to worship one deity than it is to have to worship more than one. So it's kind of a blanket thing because it's believed amongst the old what were they called? Shit, Gnostics. Old Gnostics believed that Yahweh was just a storm god.
Hmm.
And they didn't believe he was a good deity at all, which is kind of the early fabrics of Satanism, which is weird because if I'm not mistaken, right, didn't Jesus preach against organized religion? He preached against religious dogma. He preached that you are your own God. God is within you. Wasn't he like technically a pagan slash Satanist of his time?
My understanding is that he definitely classified himself as a Jewish person, and he followed the Jewish tenets, which I don't know really well at all. But yeah, like he was very much so against the idea of like a big radical organized church in the way that we have, specifically because he knew that it would eventually branch off to all of the different versions of Christianity that we see, and then we see people even going as far as to hate and destroy other people's entire religions and lives based off of that. Like you see a lot of hate for something as simple as like the Seventh Day Adventists that they celebrate their holy day on Saturday instead of Sunday, and that one little distinction has created a lot of animosity between them and a lot of the other sects of Christianity. Like there's even differences in belief to the point that some people argue, like have argued with wars, the idea that, well, was Christ bound by his wrists rather than just by the nails themselves on the cross? Like, did they tie his wrists to the boards and then they nailed him down, or he was just like bound by the nails themselves?
I've heard that too, because there are some depictions of him like that. And also another religion that's tied into Christianity a little bit is the vision of like the end of the world, right? Whatever Christians call it. What do they call that? The
Revelations.
Revelations. You know what Revelations reminds me of?
What?
Ragnarok.
It does.
It's
It
pretty
really
much
does.
Ragnarok. Odin had a vision that Loki got free from his binds with the serpent, and his son got loose and ate Odin, and then the two wolves ate the sun and moon, causing a 3-day winter on Earth, and then mankind got wiped out, and then the tree formed, and there was two human beings there. Like, it's pretty much similar to Revelation.
Yeah, it all kind of seems like a lot of the religion kind of all stems from the idea of there's going to be someday a war that will end all wars, that will end all existence on the planet as we know it, and you've got to make sure you're on the right side of things, because being on the wrong side of things again gets you into that, that awful circle of hell where you'll be, repenting for the rest of your life and suffering
Well,
for all of eternity.
what's weird about Norse though is, like, from my understanding, it doesn't matter which side you pick because mankind is going to be destroyed regardless.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, if there's and especially Norse religions themselves, over 100 gods potentially ruling over all different parts of the matter of the universe, then I mean, how can we as regular people compete with that? We just can't.
Yeah.
We're inevitably going to lose that war if it were to ever happen.
In Celtic, it's interesting going back to the Tuatha, because I know you know a good bit about Norse mythology, correct?
A little bit, not a lot, but I know some of the basics at the very least.
Well, in the Tuatha, they talked about Dagda, who was the Allfather, which is pretty much their Odin. Like, he's pretty much their Odin. Then you had Lugh, who's this warrior who had one arm. No, not Lugh. Lugh didn't have one arm. Nuada did. But you had Nuada, who had one arm, which is arguably he was kind of like their Thor figure.
Hmm.
And then you had Lugh, who was kind of like their Thor, or kind of like their, sorry, he was kind of like their Loki. Like, he was this trickster warrior. And it's interesting because, like, I love talking things with people because I like fucking with people.
Yeah.
And I had this one person, they're like, God is against homosexuals. I'm like, one of the gods that I follow, he had sex with a horse and gave birth to an 8-legged horse and gifted it to his dad.
Yeah. it gets a lot funkier than something as simple as like male on male love. Like just live and let live.
Are you familiar with that Loki story, bro?
I'm not actually.
So there was this wall they needed erected, all right, around Asgard, and Odin had this giant offer to do it, but in order for him to do it, he has to have Freya's hand in marriage. And Odin didn't want to, and Loki said, let him, but give him a guideline by the end of this winter. It's impossible. We have the worst winter ever coming. He can't do it. He'll get most of the wall done. We can finish it together. Well, Odin agreed, and they realized that he was getting close to the deadline because he was using the most powerful horse in all the land. So Loki decided he's going to turn into a female horse and distract the horse, the giant's horse, and led it into the wilderness, where that horse then mounted Loki, and Loki then gave birth to an 8-legged horse that he gifted to Odin.
Yeah, I have heard like little bits and pieces of that story. Not more of the specifics, but the Loki had turned himself into a female horse and essentially tricked Thor into kind of getting with him in a way, and made a really weird baby out of it.
He also is the father of the serpent that's supposed to destroy mankind. He's also the father of a giant ass wolf. Like, I don't know.
There's actually a band called Brothers of Metal that has one of my favorite songs in the world called Power Snake. That's all about that exactly that.
Yeah, the giant ass sea serpent.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What,
Yep.
what's the name of the? Oh, I forget the name of the serpent. Noramander or some shit like that.
He had a lot of names throughout history. Of course I can't remember any of them right now. But they detail a lot of them in that song.
Well, the serpent's actually one of the earliest symbolisms of, that snake that's biting its own tail, making the infinity sign.
Yeah.
That's actually where that they believe came from, that symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Because that in the tail, the serpent got so big that it went across the world and was able to bite its own tail.
Yeah.
Which is fucking crazy, dude. Sorry, I'm getting into this like conversation. I love it. Like I love talking
No,
about
you're
this
good,
kind of.
man.
So what's new with you, dude? Other than the band, you got any tours or shows or anything coming up?
We do. We just announced we're actually going back to Japan in March, and actually before that, we're playing in Hilo, Hawaii, at the base of a volcano, and then we're flying from there over to Japan to do a couple of shows with the band Left to Die. Left to Die, if you don't know, are some of the original members of the band Death
Oh
that
shit.
had played on the first two albums. And one of them is actually Terry Butler, who's also the bass player from Obituary. So it'll be really cool to go back over with him again, because he was an absolute sweetheart, one of the nicest guys I ever met in my life. And he was really supportive of us when we played with them back in January. And he, gave Keith his contact information, told him to keep up with him. And it just so happens that Left to Die had gotten together and decided to do some death stuff. And so they're going to Japan to play Scream Bloody Gore and oh shoot, oh god, it's escaping me right now, but certain select songs from the first two albums that Death ever did, which is really exciting because I absolutely love Death, and that's kind of another, getting to go back to Japan with Death essentially is really really exciting as well. We're really really excited to do that. We have a couple of shows before that, kind of local stuff, just to kind of knock the rust off a little bit, and to kind of get our funds a little bit more stabilized to help us pay for some of the immense amount of traveling we have coming up this year.
Dude, like that's crazy though. Like it's weird for me to think, but I know a lot of bands in this area that go overseas a lot because they have a bigger crowd.
Yeah, and that's us especially. We seem to do really well overseas, especially like our American shows are usually pretty good, and we get decent support tours. But really, overseas, Europe, the UK, Japan, especially, we learned Japan's actually one of our best markets. We found whenever we went this past time in January, our label had put our album out physically. All over the world, and especially in Japan. So when we were in Tokyo, we decided to take a day trip over to Tower Records, and we wanted to buy a copy of our album in the store in Japan. We thought that'd be really cool, and we couldn't find it, so we talked to one of the ladies who was working, and she typed on the computer looking for it. She couldn't find it. We had found out that they had sold out over the entire island of our album, except for Okinawa. Okinawa had a handful of copies left, and that was the last place on the entire island of Japan that you could buy our new album at, which was really really cool. We also playing our first show in Osaka. It was the first time this ever happened. It made me feel really cool as a musician, touring musician. Um, we had stayed in a hotel directly across the street from the venue we played in Osaka. So we went over the first show night to get our sound check in. And as we were walking over, we actually got swarmed by probably not a lot, but like 16 people or so, a bunch of little old Japanese grandmas and stuff that were all super excited to see us. They all had copies of the album, wanted everything signed, and wanted a bunch of pictures with us and stuff. And that was a really really cool experience.
Dude, that's awesome because like I didn't know Japan had a big metal scene, but it makes sense. Uh,
Yeah, Japan has a really, really big metal scene. There's just it's not really a big enough country to do like a really long-winded tour, and most bands, even really big bands, will do like maybe between 3 and 5 shows in Japan, and then connect that with other Asian countries potentially.
yeah, because Japan's got a big population, but they're not very big.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. They have a lot of like population density where a lot of the cities they have, Tokyo especially, are just crowded with a ton of people. It was actually because we played in the bigger cities, New York and Los Angeles and San Diego and stuff like that, and I've seen a lot of people in the states, but a lot of people in the states is not like a lot of people in Japan. It's just tons and tons and tons and tons of people, and probably some of the best homeless structures also I've ever seen. It's funny because we were walking back from our show in Tokyo. We got off of our train and had to walk maybe about 20 or 25 minutes to our actual hotel, and walked past what I would consider to be cardboard box mansions. Dude, there were some of them had multi floors on them, which was wild. People had little doors constructed, and there was even one that was made entirely of those like the rentable umbrellas you can get over there. It was that was kind of a
Why
little
not?
sad because of
Why not though? Like we are at the end of the day, we're animals. If we can't afford the homes that the government is creating or other people are creating, why can't we make our own out of cardboard boxes? Like what? Why not?
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And some of the structures people had built were just absolutely mind-boggling. It was really really I don't want to say it was cool. It wasn't cool exactly because you hate to see people downtrodden like that, but it was very very interesting to see the ingenuity of people in that way.
Dude, that's awesome though. Like in like a negative way, but it's still awesome because like they have their own little fucking like homeless tribe in kind of a way. And that's I think what we should do though to fix this homeless problem is all these shipping containers that we just throw away. We could easily clean them out and make homes out of them.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of people that are doing that.
Mhm.
I have an uncle that lives out in California. Actually, he has like a little fenced-in property up in the mountains, and what he did, he built his home studio by taking two of those shipping containers, knocking off two of the side walls, and just welding them together, and that's his whole structure down there for his studio that he has.
There's a guy I saw, he made a mansion out of them. He took 6 of them and he stacked them and he put a roof on it and 2 garage doors.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
like, and solar panels, so he don't even have to pay an electric bill.
yeah, yeah. That must be pretty nice.
I think solar panels are going to make a big like surge here soon with the price of everything going up, dude. Because when I lived out in Arizona, like it's hard to find a house that didn't have them.
Yeah. Yeah, when you have those really sun-rich areas like that, it's hard to, fight against the idea of, well, we have one of the biggest wealths of renewable energy right at our fingertips. We just haven't found a very practical way of utilizing it yet. But with the technology getting better, I mean, we all saw the videos for like the solar powered roads and stuff years ago that, of course, never came to fruition because it just wasn't ready yet. But eventually, we might have technology like that, or the idea of potentially someday the human race being able to utilize a Dyson sphere and be able to just get all of our energy directly from the sun, which would drastically help the violence in the world with the wars on oil and coal and other non-renewable resources.
What do you think about the theory though that like none of our current ideas are original? They existed already at one time and we just wiped ourselves out by becoming too advanced.
That's definitely a distinct possibility for sure, because of course a lot of scientists have determined that the universe goes through cycles, and there's a lot of ideas and theories around the idea that our Big Bang was not actually the beginning of the universe and was just like a resetting of the universe, as
Mhm.
if the universe had kind of imploded on itself into the point that the size of a pin, and then exploded out with massive energy into the universe that we know now.
Which also adds to the theory that there's no really original thought because all of this already existed and continues to exist.
It,
And
it
that
could very well.
and that explains how the past civilizations were able to build the shit they did. Because like modern technology, they find it hard to build that same shit even with modern technology.
Yeah, yeah, and the idea that the Egyptians, for instance, like you can't even fit a razor blade in between a lot of those stones. They were carved so perfectly and put together so perfectly. And I mean, there of course could have been some higher intervention in some way, but I think a lot of people also forget the idea that we also had hundreds, thousands of years and tens of thousands of people building those structures too. And if a group of several hundreds of people really put their minds to something and keep on it and keep at a task like that for their entire lives, there's no telling what we can actually do. I mean,
True.
and the pyramids and Machu Picchu and a lot of, I mean, just the fact that we're still discovering brand new temples and things, pyramids like in Central America. Every single day we're finding new stuff, and it's wild to think that it's been lost to time so far that the rainforest essentially just kind of ate it up and just covered it all up, so that we can use satellite technology now to just look and see, oh, there's a whole structure there. It's buried, feet beneath all of this debris, but hey, let's go see if we can find it.
So with us talking about lost civilizations and shit like that and lost due to time, some of it was lost purposely, like the Romans destroyed it and hid it. But also there's civilizations that we may never know about, like Atlantis.
Yeah, yeah, or like the burnings of the libraries of Babylon and stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
it's crazy to think all of the history that we lost, because again, history is written by the conquerors. So the idea was just to stomp out their entire religion and their entire way of life, and to modernize them in the way of their religion.
But luckily
And
we have found some of those tablets that we thought was lost due to time. Luckily.
yeah, 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 which has been really, really cool. Modern technology has really found a way to show us a lot of really cool stuff that just got lost to time, for one reason or another, whether it be from, the Romans burning it down, or the Crusades, destroying just everything they came across that wasn't exactly, like what they wanted to see.
Did you know that they recently found a tablet in Cincinnati, Ohio? It was on a mound and they found it buried in the mound. And they believe this tablet dates back to like the Mayans or the Sumerians and all of them, which means that Ohio was inhabited way before the indigenous people and way before we thought it was inhabited, which
Yeah.
adds to the theory that we just keep either A, moving elsewhere or wiping ourselves out.
Yeah, I mean, because in those ancient times, people really they kind of had to keep moving, because, you come across a really bad winter or a really bad, cataclysmic type event, and, you got to get out of there. You got to find a new, safer place to live. So a lot of those structures were just potentially even abandoned at certain points. There's what was the oldest structure they found so far from civilized people, Walden City, Obleke Tepe, I think it was, or
Mhm.
something along those lines. Yeah, that's wild. That's wild to think that people were building those kinds of structures that sometimes, 10,000 years ago.
Well,
That's,
there's a pyramid on every continent.
yeah, yep,
We discovered in Mexico their pyramids were built weird because they built them on hills. They would
yeah.
build from the top down. They would build inside of like a hill and then cut it to look like a pyramid.
Yeah, and a lot of the reasoning for that was so that they could look at the heavens and map out the stars, because even ancient people knew that the secrets to life were all going to be in some way involved in the stars and the heavens. The the different galaxies, and because it's when you really think about the size of the universe, there's very very little real comprehension as to just how big it really is, how many other planets there are. I mean, you think about just our one galaxy itself, we have anywhere between 100 and 400 billion stars in it. Any one of those stars can have any number of planets revolving around it. The numbers just become astronomical, because if you look at something like the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, which has, been almost 14, 15 years ago discovered, I mean, in that one image, we had over 10, I think 15,000 separate galaxies that we could look at in what was perceived to be a completely empty spot of the sky. But once we looked at it, and we actually took a closer look, it was, wow, there's way, way, way more than what we thought was out there, and the universe just got that much exponentially bigger as far as we were concerned.
I also find it really weird that old civilizations, I know the Sumerians talked about it, I think Egyptians might have too, a ninth planet in our solar system that could not be seen with the naked eye, but they knew it was there. And recently we discovered the outer lines of a ninth planet possibly in our solar system.
Yeah, yeah, it's farther back, even past Pluto. My understanding is that it's I'm not sure if that's the Kuiper Belt or not. I might be wrong about that, but there is a belt of asteroids and meteors that circles our solar system, very very far beyond Pluto itself, actually. And they discovered a very large planet out there, a rocky planet that, it's, I mean, that's wild. Like, there's really really, it's really hard to fathom just what actually could be out there, and even hiding on our doorstep, and we just, we're not able to see it yet.
So, what do you think of the possibility? Because I was thinking of this the other day, and I like to explore different theories. It's not that I believe those theories; it's just fun to explore them.
Hmm.
The fact that a lot of people think that we was created by extraterrestrials, as mentioned with the ancient alien theory. Which, if that is the case, that would explain why we care more about up there than we do here, because we don't belong here. We want to go back to whence we came, is the theory. That's why we're so dead set on up there.
Yeah, yeah, because it's, I mean, naturally, human beings are explorers. I mean, you look back in history, from the Vikings to the English to the the Italians, the French. We've always explored. We've always been very excited, and even myself. That's why I'm so excited about the international travel, is to explore and get to see different things that I am not normally able to see and experience for myself.
But we're not the only species that does that, though.
No, no, I think that's actually a very animalistic trait. The idea of just, finding new ground,
Mhm.
essentially, really exploring. And it's kind of, it's even a little disheartening to think about just how big it is, because even the idea of, try with this whole idea of trying to colonate Mars and stuff, is just, still so far out of our reach that, I mean, technically, what was it? I think Elon Musk had said that his goal by 2050 was to have 1 million people stationed on Mars, and he's already done way past the ability to even like get to that point now. He would have had to have had his starships, I think, making several hundreds of trips every year to even make that a reality. And that's just, I mean, they're just now getting to the points where, okay, our starships almost work. We're getting close, but not quite there yet. I mean, don't get me wrong. We went from the 60s being able to blast off a ship and, humans piloting it and trying to fly it right, and to the point that now, you've got SpaceX doing stuff where they're launching these rockets, and then the rocket boosters will literally just descend right back down perfectly and land back on even a floating platform out on the ocean, which is wild to think about.
Well, the reason why I think that we have been visited in the past by extraterrestrials is because of this very reason. We can't be the only living being in the entire universe that is trying to do the same thing.
You wouldn't think so. I mean, the numbers show that. I mean, just statistically, there should be somebody else out there, and more than likely, if if they're not to our developmental stages in the human race yet, they wouldn't even know we were there. And I mean, who's to say that they might not be watching over us or looking at us right now potentially if they are technologically advanced, like much further than us. It just it all depends when they came to be, and how hard they're trying to find other people in the universe, like what we are now.
What would we do if we landed on like Mars or Jupiter or whatever and we found a fucking pyramid? Like how fucking, like, uh
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I had this theory for the longest time, and I still kind of do, where Earth, we're not the only living species, but I think we inhabited other planets in our past lives, like different species, and we destroyed those planets and seek refuge here because we advanced enough in technology to put life on those planets. And we're just doing that again.
Yeah, I've even heard a lot of theories about how, like, maybe even Mars at one point had been a habitable planet with its own atmosphere and liquid water, of course, and that some peoples had actually lived on Mars and migrated to Earth after a major cataclysmic event that removed their atmosphere and made Earth or Mars the barren wasteland that it is today.
That's actually part of the ancient astronaut theory, where the ninth planet in our solar system is their planet Nibiru, where the atmosphere was being destroyed and they needed gold to fix their atmosphere. So they was coming to Earth and to create a slave race to help with the gold issue, and they were using Mars as like a fueling base.
Mhm.
And the belief was that they created mankind. They were giants, and they pretty much created us. They got the gold they needed, and they fucked off into space, which modern science is kind of proving that theory in a way. It doesn't completely fix our atmosphere anyway, but if you put gold particles in our atmosphere, it slightly does show a difference.
Hmm. I
And I mean,
wonder. I wonder how you'd even do something like that. Just to surround us in gold. Because it's kind of funny to think that, like, all of the gold on planet Earth, Earth's actual gold, is actually hidden and liquefied inside of the mantle, and all of the Earth or all of the gold that we find on our planet is actually just from, like, asteroids and meteorite collisions that have
mhm.
been left from other parts of our solar system. So there's definitely a very distinct possibility that something like that could very well be real.
See, the thing is, people call me crazy when I tease these ideas, but I'm like, you know what? Our entire existence don't make sense because we're on this big old ball of gas. We're energy. We're electricity and water, and we're all these little fucking neurons and shit, and we're just all these particles, and we're living this existence, right? And the universe is like infinite, but it's expanding somehow.
Yeah, yeah, the expansion of the universe, which is wild to think about, the fact that everything is just still flying apart. So I mean, the idea is that it's flying apart so fast that by the time we do get these technologies together, that we're able to maybe actually travel like interstellar in an interstellar fashion, that everything's going to be so much further away, we'll still never be able to get to it. Because I mean, like, even getting to Mars, you think about like a regular Mars trip the way we would do it now. We'd have to wait till Mars and Earth were at the perfect trajectory. We'd have to plan out and say, okay, Mars is going to be in this part of the solar system at this time. So we need to take off from this part of the planet at this time so that we can meet up with Mars to make sure we get there at exactly the shortest amount of time. Whereas if we had a more like efficient way of getting there, like we had uh, uh, an easier form of energy to bring along with us, we didn't have to bring tons and tons and tons of fuel, then we could just literally burn and blast our way there. We could get to Mars in a matter of weeks, potentially.
See, this is why I think that we aren't the only ones that like we may have had visitors in the past, is because we can't be the most advanced civilization in the entire universe. That would be cocky to think. So there has to be somebody smarter than us.
You would think and hope so. And I mean, again, like statistically, the numbers show that potentially there should be somebody else out there. There should absolutely be. But again, there's also the distinct possibility that like we were an accident. Life on this planet was a complete and total accident that we just happened to be exactly in the right place at the right time. We had the right organisms start at the right time that were then able to help oxygenate the planet and build the atmosphere itself so that other animals and plant life could actually flourish and crawl up out of the seabeds eventually and get up on land and start moving and walking around and breathing the air. And it's really wild to think about.
I like the theory that we are all the same existence. Like we live different lives, very much so, but we are all the universe. We're all the same. We're all energy. We're just living this experience. We're basically the universe living an existence, a human existence. And
Yeah.
none of this is real.
Yeah, yeah, that's again a very distinct possibility. I've experimented a little bit with DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and that's said to be the spirit molecule, and the kind of the door into like the other side of life. That
Mhm.
you can really that there is an entire like almost like the multiverse theory in a way that there is a whole nother existence living directly around us, just us being human beings we're not able to see or to interpret that with our stupid smooth monkey brains.
It's basically like kind of like reincarnation, but different, where when we die, we reach our true self.
Yeah, yeah,
And
there are a lot of people that believe that because my understanding is that when you die, your brain is absolutely flooded with dimethyltryptamine because it's produced in our brains.
yeah,
It's
I was
what
going to
makes us
ask that. Isn't
even.
that the chemical that activates when you die?
Yep, yep, it absolutely is. There's been a lot of research, especially that shows that there is a very distinct possibility that that is our window into that other sort of universe. When it's all around us all of the time, we're just too stupid to see it. Essentially.
So that's kind of like the stoned ape theory in a way, where we gained this consciousness because we ate psychedelic mushrooms and we lost touch of the actual reality. So we need psychedelic mushrooms or DMT or something like that to reach that actual reality because we were stupid and we flooded our brain with a chemical that we weren't originally supposed to have, but now we need it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's fucking crazy, dude. That's kind of like how scientists discovered that we have a whole endocannabinoid system. Our body's literally designed to take in cannabis for a positive reason.
Yeah, yeah. And there's there's a lot of animals that for one reason or another, like dogs, for instance, as simply as that. Like a dog can't actually. My understanding is that a dog can't actually like. You couldn't have a dog smoke a bowl and get high. They have to actually eat the marijuana itself, so that they can digest it correctly, and the cannabinoids can actually interact with their brain in that way. For
Mhm.
us, it has to actually be burned and heated up to a certain temperature to unlock those benefits for us.
Yeah, because we need to decarboxylate it because cannabis originally comes as THCV. You have to activate it into THCA in order to get the high. But we're one of the few species that can't activate it into THCV without lighting it.
Yeah,
Um,
yep,
Other animals, it does it in their stomach.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Their bodies are just kind of designed to make that happen, whereas we need a helping hand by good old fire.
And it's weird because it's been proven that cannabis is actually cures a lot of illnesses, including cancer. If done properly. I knew a guy one time, he cured his cancer because I think he cut out red meat and sugar out of his diet just altogether, and he was taking RSO oil.
Yeah,
And
yeah, the Rick Simpson oil. Love that stuff.
he pretty much, I know you're a stoner like me, dude. We need to do a part two where we just talk about weed.
Absolutely.
No, RSO oil, basically what happened was is he starved the cancer because it eats on the chemical compounds found within sugar and red meat. And then he was taking the RSO because it was shrinking the tumor. So he was
hmm
starving it and he was having an added thing to strengthen his own immune system and strengthen his good cells to destroy that. Well, not really destroy, but revert that bad cell back into a good cell.
Yeah.
Um, and he successfully did so. you need to starve the disease. Our bodies are not meant to take in the foods we take in.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you go back, just 120 years, I mean, it's marijuana was very, very prevalent in almost all societies. I mean, what was it? I think just a handful of years ago, they had discovered a bowl in China, like a very ancient bowl with remnants of ancient marijuana in it. I mean, people have been smoking and using marijuana and cannabis for a long, long, long time, for almost all of human existence, and it's only been recently with this whole war on drugs and the idea that it's bad, it makes you stupid, and it slows and numbs your mind and all that stuff, that people are kind of afraid of it now. But I'm very glad to see that it's definitely turning a corner now. I mean,
It's a very
Ohio just
holy. It's a very holy
yeah.
plant too. Go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. What were we gonna say about Ohio?
I was going to say, Ohio recently, of course, just legalized it recreationally now, so
Mhm.
you can we can finally go down to the corner store and buy a packet of joints, but it's still weird in Ohio because you're still not supposed to smoke it. You're allowed to vaporize it, but you are not allowed to smoke it, which is really, really funny.
I've been a medical patient for about 4 years, dude, and that shit did not make sense to me at all. They're like, you can't smoke it, but you can vape it. I'm like,
Well, that and the Ohio Ace pissed me off because the idea that in Ohio, for absolutely no reason, the Ace are only 2.8 grams and still costs about 35 or $40, which is a ripoff. Because uh, our band, the Convalescence, is actually based in Toledo, Ohio, which is only a hop, skip, and a jump away from the border of Michigan. So I would just go up to Michigan, where they've had it recreationally legal for a number of years now, and it's so cheap up there. I mean, you can get an entire ounce of like pretty decent stuff that's still up in the high 20s of percentage, and you can get that for $25 an ounce.
yeah, dude.
It's ridiculous.
When I lived in Arizona, it was the same way, dude. I'm like, it's
Mm-mm,
cheap as fuck out here, but I go to Ohio, dude. Nope. And what pissed me off too is I was a medical patient in Ohio, right?
mm-hmm.
Closest dispensary at the time was an hour away. But if I drove 15 minutes, I can get to one, but it was in Wheeling, West Virginia, where I'm not allowed to purchase.
Yeah, yeah. What West Virginia, I don't think is. They've been medically legal now for a few years, but I can't see West Virginia going recreational at least anytime soon, because that's and I think that I've got a right to say this because of where I live and kind of where my family lineage is from. All the hillbillies down here, it's still a bad drug that ruins and cripples society. It's a big
But
thing is that people.
alcohol's fine.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. People see it as a gateway drug. They'll say like, "Oh, when you smoke your first." I still remember back in my high school health class where what we were taught was potentially your first hit of your first joint can kill you. That's what I was actually taught. That is what my teacher actually told me, word for word. Your first hit of your first joint can kill you. So it's the idea that there's just so much misinformation about that I actually believed that for a certain amount of time. I was stupid enough to really just believe it at face value because these people in power that were telling me these things, I believe they had my best interest at heart. And I mean, I get that they were trying to you know kind of get away from the idea of like, oh, yeah, you try this, you'll want to try this, and then you'll want to try this. But as you alluded to a little bit ago, the idea of alcohol, you know I mean, the prohibition for marijuana has absolutely not worked in the same way that the prohibition for alcohol did not work. It just didn't. It actually created a lot of criminal empires that we're still dealing with today that you just can't get away from. To the point that now we have stuff like crocodile and meth and like all of these super scary drugs that actually do kill people and actually do absolutely ruin lives. And it's just a regular thing. I mean, I was what I do for work down here is I deliver groceries for Walmart, and I was sitting in Walmart waiting for some orders, and I had an old buddy, kind of pull up in the car. He's like, "Hey, what's going on, Dan?" And we're kind of chatting through our car windows for a minute. He's like, "You want a hit?" And I was like, oh, and he pulled, and I was like, like, of what? And he pulled up a bowl and he's like, meth. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm totally cool. Like, I appreciate the offer, but that's not what I'm about. Like, I'm trying to, like, have some fun and maybe decompress after a day with a bowl. I'm not trying to smoke some fucking meth. Like, what the hell?
Like, that's not me. What's weird is people claim that weed is a gateway drug. Now, I know I'm a rare case, but I used to drink, right? Not heavily all the time, but I drink. I smoked weed. I quit drinking. I didn't feel a need to because I found my new love. I've never touched even a cigarette, dude. Like, I've not touched cigarettes. I've not done any drugs. All I've ever done is smoke weed. So, like, I can't be the only case.
No, I think that there's a lot of benefits to starting marijuana smoking, especially during an addiction phase like that. For instance, my younger brother actually right now he has to take regular drug tests for work, and he's been drinking a lot lately, the last several years especially. He likes to come home and drink a case of beer, and play video games at the end of a hard work day, and he has a really hard job too. And he recently came into some medical issues where he's got to stop drinking as much. And he told me, he's like, I've been, because he used to smoke when he was younger before he got this other job. And he even told me straight out, he said, I tried smoking a bowl, and like I put just like a little bit in a one hitter, and I took a couple hits of it, and I didn't even want to drink. I didn't even want beer after that. There was no part of me that wanted to go drink after I had done that. But of course he can't do that because that's, even though it's legal now, you can still get fired. You can still lose your job. You can still lose your
Because it's
entire.
not legal on a federal level yet.
Well, not even that, but even if it does become legal at a federal level, I'm sure that there will be workarounds built into that to where companies can still fire you based on that, because there's still just such a misconception about marijuana and what it does to you and how much it can affect you, that people say, well, because you smoked a bowl last night, you're going to come to work and fuck everything up, and we don't want you here.
It's not even last night, though, is what these people don't realize, though, is you can fail a drug test for weed and have smoked like weeks to a month ago, depending on how heavily of a smoker you was.
Yeah, absolutely. Because marijuana will stay in your system, your urine specifically, for anywhere from 24 to 48 hours just after taking one hit. And then it'll continue to build up from there. And it can be even, it just kind of builds itself and stays in your system longer and longer and longer based on how much you use it. And I mean, that really, it sucks that we have to piss for people to be able to show them that we're not doing these, really basic mundane activities, something that people did for tens of thousands of years. And now all of a sudden we're not allowed to have that anymore, which I think is
temples while high as shit. Like, what are you doing?
Exactly. And I think that's a really big contributor to the human condition, and why we're facing this big epidemic of really severe depression and mental illness, is because some of the most basic tools that we have at our disposal are literally illegal. Like down here in West Virginia, you can't even like farm ginseng. Ginseng farming is completely illegal and regulated by the government. You can go to jail for that shit. Like, it's ridiculous that we're outlawing plants. Like, because I remember it was when I worked at Taco Bell. I was maybe 16 or 17 years old, and there was a girl that I was working with, and she had made the comment about how, like, oh, you don't mess around with that stuff, that weed, do you? And I was like, yeah, dude, I smoke all the time. I'm a pothead. And she's like, well, you never know what people are mixing that stuff with. And it's like, what do you mean? People don't mix marijuana with anything. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've smoked my fair share of like promethazine blunts and stuff like that when I was a kid. Like wrapping, taking the blunt wrap and putting promethazine on the outside to get that little pill high along with it. But I mean, when it comes to just straight marijuana, it's literally a plant. I have myself physically pulled a bud off of a freshly budding plant and smoked it. And it was, it was really wet, and it was kind of hard to smoke, and tasted vaguely of sausage, which was kind of weird, but like it got me high. It was exactly what, I thought it was going to be. it's the most legit drug that we have in this world, but for some reason the pharmaceutical industry has just pushed us into a corner and pigeonholed us in a way so that we have to take all of these extra super complicated chemicals to try and fix all of these imbalances, where a lot of the times that stuff can be literally fixed with not just cannabinoids but also psilocybin mushrooms. That has literally been proven to actually beat depression. Super clinically depressed people have taken a single trip on mushrooms and have been cured for months at a time afterward. Like it was a few years ago, there were a few studies about military personnel that had really bad PTSD from being in wars and Desert Storm and all these things. They had literally had their PTSD completely cured for a certain amount of time based on a trip with psilocybin mushrooms. And it's just crazy that, like, mushrooms too, just like cannabinoids, it's literally, it is a mushroom. It is a fungus that grows right up out of the ground. You eat it and you trip and you have a good time and then you're done. Like, they're not dangerous. I mean, I guess they're dangerous in our modern society because of the criminal enterprises that have been built up around it, but other than that, there's no danger in it. Nobody has ever died from marijuana consumption. I do know that some people can be allergic to marijuana and can be allergic to THC. Actually, I have a really good friend, the old bass player for my current band, the Convalescence. He actually recently had some medical issues that he believes and his doctors believe were directly related to his marijuana use. But I don't think that's not like a regular thing. That just happens to be the way his body is and the way his body handles the THC, that it was not beneficial to him at that time.
You can be allergic to anything, though, really. And
Dude, I know people that are allergic to cigarette smoke. Like, it's absolutely a real thing. Like,
me,
yeah, it happens. It really, really does.
if I'm around
And
it too long, I actually will not be able to breathe for like 2 days.
mm,
Now, when back to the psychedelic mushrooms, it's not just psychedelic mushrooms that are beneficial, but mushrooms in general. They found out that certain mushrooms actually regrow brain like cells and shit. Like, you can regrow your memory pretty much. And it might be beneficial to those with Alzheimer's and dementia, which another interesting note is the reason why we may never find a cure for dementia or Alzheimer's is because we don't treat it right. Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. It's a sugar issue.
yeah, and it's really hard to get away from that kind of thing because everything in the world now is just consumed and wrapped in sugar.
Yep.
And I mean, like we said, that hasn't really happened until more modern society, when companies have started deciding that, okay, we want to sell as much of this product as we can, so we have to make it taste as good as we can and preserve it, give it a longer shelf life so it can sit on a shelf for a number of weeks, and somebody comes by and buys it and it's still safe to eat. Well, it's safe in the way it's not going to make you sick in that moment. And don't get me wrong, I'm very glad to not have to eat food that will make me sick like they did back in the 16 and 1700s. But my goodness, like, the trade-off that we're having, like all of these new medical issues that we're having based off of the processed foods that we eat, it's wild. It really, really is.
I'll be honest, like, I try to eat healthy, but then I have those moments where I'm like, fuck it, and I'll just eat a bunch of donuts, right? Because it's readily available, it's easy, it's cheap. Like,
It really is. The cheapest food is the worst food for you. And if you want to be healthy, if you want to be even something as simple as trying to eat organically, man, you're talking about an increase in price of like 40% on some of these products, which,
bro, I tried the organic diet and I spent $300 a week and I had to quit.
yeah. I mean, it's really, really wild. Like, just how big the disparity is between, like, the cheap, shitty processed foods that we can eat compared to, like, the real organic actual foods that we can have.
But it shouldn't be that way because they're spending more money to make the other shit. Like, they're not paying for the pesticides and all of that shit. Like, I get it don't last as long on the shelves, but why can't we just go back to being civilizations again instead of like worldwide corporations? Why not just mom and pop shops, people growing again? Why do they have to make growing illegal to begin with? Like, I get it, governments are now involved, but like, I guess government's always been an issue because you can even date back to ancient Egypt and the Celts. They had established governments.
Yeah, it all depends on how much power you give to it. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't need some sort of governing body to kind of help weed out like the worst parts of society. We absolutely need that kind of thing. But do we need it on the scale that we have right now where it's so big and so convoluted to the point that I mean like you can't have plants. Like certain plants are bad for you. You know, not just bad for you, but detrimental to all of society, which is a really wild concept to me. It always has been.
The only laws that we should follow as the United States of America is whatever the Bill of Rights says. Like, that's it. No more, like, unless we got to change the Bill of Rights. But, like, don't add little fucking laws. Like, plants are illegal, rainwater is illegal. Fuck that. The Bill of Rights says we have the right to that shit. So, like, fucking quit it.
Well, yeah, and I'm even maybe a little bit of a hot take right here, but I mean, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, you know, the Declaration of Independence. These were all documents that were written at this point now hundreds of years ago by people that would have never dreamed or imagined the type of society that we live in now. So the idea that like I understand we you know a lot of people cherish and hold those documents very closely and very sacredly like there are some things that probably should be changed in there to accommodate more modern society because we're not going to go back to the way it was back in the 1770s. That's just not going to happen.
That's why I
We've
said change it, like change the Bill of Rights, but have no different laws above that. Like, because the Bill of Rights, like you said, is old. We have added to it since then. We made slavery illegal, for God's sakes. Like, that was a thing we did. We changed the Bill
yeah
of Rights. Like, alcohol
yeah
was added to the Bill of Rights and then removed. Oh,
yeah. I mean, it's just there's so many like everybody just wants everybody to behave a certain way, and I understand that there are definitely certain societal norms that we need to keep up with, and we need to make sure that everybody kind of is in check to a certain extent. You know, I believe very heavily in the idea that you know there are some really bad things in this world that people should not do and should not consume, but at the same time, like we should have us like I'm a very big heavy believer that most drugs should just be decriminalized and I ought to be able to go down to my corner store and pick up a packet of Xanax if I really want it
I
like
agree. I
like
agree.
don't get me wrong, there are going to be some people that are going to abuse that 100%, but after enough abuse like because it's like the prohibition thing. During prohibition times people drank a lot more than they did even before that, and then afterward of course people drank more, but then it absolutely started to taper off because when you tell people they can't do something, I mean it's like when you were a teenager at home, you know, don't do that, but I want to do that. That looks fun. That's
Mhm.
exciting. This is cool. Oh, this is bad. Oh no, I shouldn't be doing this. This is really
Isn't
you
it
know?
weird also that we are taught as a society, whether it be through religion, through politics, or whatever, that our natural animalistic instincts are something that we should feel guilty for?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of that in more modern society now where like some very basic like biological instincts that we have are just completely wrong, you know, and it's
Facts.
yeah, like don't get me wrong, there are definitely some things that happen like more, you know, instinctually like in animals and things like that that we have tendencies towards that we should not do in modern society. But at the same time, we absolutely should not. I mean, it's the way our brains are wired. Like at the end of the day, we are animals.
And
We are like yeah.
we're also not the only animal species to do things that we deem as evil, like abortion, for instance. Egyptians did it. Other animals do it. Like, we're not the first civilization or the first species to do it. We're just the more civilized way of doing it because they would usually wait till the being is out of their body before consuming it or letting nature kill it.
And that was also during a time when, like, a lot of pregnancies, like, just did not work. I mean, people still didn't know about germs and certain diseases back then. We had no idea that there were these tiny little microorganisms living all over us and inside of us that were helping our homeostasis processes to keep our bodies together and living happily. I mean, the microbiology discovery, I think, was just as important as what it is, like any kind of like space exploration discoveries. Because at the end of, you look at like quantum computing, for instance. I'm drifting a little bit, but quantum computing now, we're looking at the idea of using individual atoms to store our information on. That's fucking crazy. That's wild. That's dude, because when you really think about like an individual atom, and like how small it really is, like, I mean, who's to say that's not a whole nother universe that we're literally getting like a front row seat of? Like, that's
What if
yeah.
with you saying that, like those little organisms are basically a whole new life, like a planet or whatever, living on us? What if that's
Yeah.
us? We're just little specks on something else.
We could very well be, and I might be dating myself here just a little bit, but the like the what was it, the first Men in Black movie?
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of the movie is the very, very end, where it starts pulling the camera back through all of the universes and galaxies and stars, all the way back to where we're just a tiny little marble being played with by a bunch of like really huge, crazy aliens.
That's probably what
I
it
mean,
is.
it could be something as simple as that. It really, really, I guess that's not simple. That's pretty complex, but it could very well be something like that. It's
And
it's
it's just
it's really
nonstop
hard to
because
say.
those aliens are probably just really small specks on another. And that goes back to the giant theory too. Maybe those creatures are the ones that visited us.
It could very well be, and I mean, like we have millions and millions of tiny little organisms and bacterias and things that live all inside of and on us, that keep us together. That you remove those, and like our bodies just don't work the same way anymore.
Dude, that's fucking crazy. I might get off of here soon because it only lets me go for about 2 hours. We've been going for about an hour and a half. Time flies when you're having fun.
It really does. I would like to pivot back over to the band just a little bit.
No, you're good.
Um,
Go ahead. You have like 30 minutes. I was just letting you know that we had like 30 minutes or so.
oh no, you're completely fine, man. But so kind of bringing things back to the band and kind of what we do. Um, we I guess to kind of start things off, we've been seeing a lot of success actually getting away from more metal tours and shows. We actually just had this past August had a really, really successful tour. Do you know the band Green Jello?
Yo, I fucking love green jello.
I knew it. I took you as a guy that loved Green Jello.
Green
Uh,
jello sucks.
Dude, yes, yes. And we did a full U.S. tour with them, and we're looking potentially to do more with them this next upcoming year. We're very excited about that. Um, but we got to do a full U.S. tour with them. It was great. All of the guys were really awesome. It was really, really also very interesting to see that we show up to a show, and you've got Bill Manspeaker, like the face of Green Jello, like Green Jello himself, basically, and then you'll just have like 27 guitar players all showing up with combo amps, and you've got a kazoo player and like flute players and trumpet players, not necessarily, but you've there were many, many shows, especially on the West Coast, where there were two or three drummers on stage at once. You'd have four vocalists. You've got three, four, five guitar players. We saw them as many times with six or seven guitar players, and then multiple bass players on the stage too. I believe, if I'm correct, that Green Jello still holds the Guinness Book of World Records, the record for the most band members worldwide. I think there's something over 3,000 now members of Green Jello.
Yeah, because as far as my understanding is, he basically just auditions for every area he goes to, new bandmates, so he don't have to pay for their touring.
Yeah, so the way that it works, at least the way that it worked in many years before, things have changed a little bit now to how they're working, because they're having a pretty good resurgence right now, and they're really trying to capitalize on that. But the way it worked for a really long time is Green Jello had all of these members all over the country and all over the world that just knew the material already, and then Bill would just fly into each individual city. He'd get together with his band and say, "Okay, we're playing at this city. Everybody meet up here. Whoever's in the area," and then the band would come in and he'd play with that particular part of Green Jello, and then he would fly to the next city and he would then play that show with those members of Green Jello. It's changed a little bit now. He kind of got the idea from us a little bit, because the band, my band, the Convalescence, we actually tour in a modified school bus. So we got like an old school bus and ripped all the insides out and put. We've got 6 bunks, a couple of couches, a fridge, and all that stuff in there, and we tour the country in that. And it was really funny because the very first time Bill ever came up onto our bus was actually at the Hard Rock Cafe in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was so funny because it's always trashed. We are not very super clean people when it comes, especially to touring on our bus. It can get a little gross sometimes. But he came walking onto our bus, stepping over the trash and stepping over the overturned trash can. It's like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And like, it just absolutely blew his mind that that's the way we were doing it, to the point that he immediately went out and bought his own school bus and converted it. And that tour we did in August, we had 2 school buses on that tour, and that's how they've been touring now. And they've had all the members, because now modern Green Jello, they have kind of like a centralized band of, like, they've got a guitar player, a drummer, they've got a bass player, Slim, give her a shout out, she's super awesome, one of my favorite people in the world. All of those guys are. And then aside from his like actual band that comes and tours with him, he just kind of, he'll post on his Facebook and his social medias like, hey, we're going to be here at this time. And then, because Keith, our band dad, he's actually Green Jello's agent. He's an agent and a band manager himself, so he books bands in his free time. And so he had tour manager duties on that tour. So he'd always, try to show up and be like, "Well, Bill, how many people you got coming today?" And almost always the answer was, "I don't know, whoever shows up." And so it would just always be like, okay, damn it, we kind of need stage plots. We need to know what's happening, how many people are going to be here. But it's really, really hard to do that kind of thing when you have an entity as big and as vast and complex as what Green Jello is. And I've got to say, it was one of my favorite tours that I've ever did. I think there were a handful of shows that we had between maybe like 85 and 100 people. Other than that, every other show we played with them was well over 200 people, and a couple of them were closer to 400 and 500. I mean,
that's an interesting
a lot of fun
lineup, though, dude. You guys and Green Jello.
You'd think so, but it worked. It was so absolutely organic, because a lot of those old punk rock dudes who love and remember Green Jello, if they're not into like heavier music already, excuse me, then they see an act like ours where, yeah, we're playing blast beats and we're playing breakdowns and screaming and gurgling and being all weird, but then with the paint and the theatrics and all that stuff, they see it as like kind of just like, oh, it's just like another kind of version of Green Jello almost.
I guess that's no different than when I saw Primus and they were with Slayer. I guess
yeah. And like those multi-genre tours are doing really well. We've actually seen like a lot of success with we've been doing a handful of rap gigs here lately. We actually just did I think it was 3 or 4 dates on the Shaggy 2 Dope tour. It was Shaggy 2 Dope, DJ Clay, King 810, and a band called Heathen Sun. And then we jumped on, I think, 3 or 4 of those shows. And my goodness, if we did not absolutely kill on those shows, they absolutely loved us. We've been realizing here more lately, and this kind of goes back to the idea of being hated by a lot of people in the metal community because of the things that we do, the things that we do on stage. But like the Juggalos especially seem to really, really love us and appreciate us to the point that we got a couple of family chants while we were playing with them. And I mean, you know, the whole band collectively, I mean, we're not all necessarily Juggalos exactly, but we're all very Juggalo adjacent. Myself, I've been a fan of ICP since I was about 15 years old and heard fucking Tilt-A-Whirl for the first time, you know?
I give IZP a lot of credit because they're very welcoming of people of all walks of lives. Like they have wrestlers show up at their events. And like ICP kind of become like a phenomenon. Love them or hate them, you got to at least respect what they've done.
They have. ICP even has their own wrestling league itself, like
Yeah.
the Juggalo wrestlers. That's a very real thing. And I mean, you know, like Shaggy and Violent J, they'll go off and do their own tours by themselves. But ICP itself, like as an organization, is still one of the biggest bands around. Sorry, my cat.
They're considered a terrorist organization.
They were. I actually just watched that documentary pretty recently. I can't remember exactly the name of the documentary. I'll have to send it to you. But it's really, really interesting because it shows all like ICPs, you know, them starting as like the inner city posse and like, you know, just kind of being, you know, like, you know, kind of, you know, trying to be wannabe gangsters running around the streets of Detroit, all the way to the point of, well, we're going to put on this paint, we're going to do some wild shit, and we're going to be the insane clown posse. And then it just kind of snowballed into literally one of the biggest and greatest groups of people I've ever met. Like Juggalos are so extremely like welcoming to, like you said, all walks of life. I mean, as long as you're not like a woman beater, a child abuser, like any of that kind of stuff, you are welcomed into the Juggalo family with open arms, and they'll absolutely love you and appreciate you forever. And that's we're actually we're looking to do some more Juggalo related stuff in the coming years. There's some tours being worked on and booked that are very, very exciting. We're absolutely ecstatic to be a part of, and
Are you allowed saying what shows yet or no?
not exactly, because they're still being worked out. But we can absolutely assure that we are diving head first into this whole Juggalo and rap scene because for some reason playing those rap shows like that, they absolutely loved us. It actually didn't come through and happen, but we actually got an offer to do a tour with Afro Man at one point.
Bro,
It,
you
it
should.
some things kind of fell through, but there were real talks of us going out and doing a full U.S. run with Afro Man because we had played a show in Pierre's, and he was actually playing another show. We were in the main room at Pierre's, and he was in the smaller room called Stan's room, which is in the same building right down the way. And our vocalist Keith had been outside, kind of, you know, getting ready and putting the paint on and looking all crazy and spooky. And Afro Man pulled up in his SUV, got out, and his detail was trying to get him inside the building. He looked over at Keith and saw him, and immediately came right over, gave him a compliment, and gave him a fist bump, and like, you know, hell yeah, you know, this is awesome. And even with Shaggy, I mean, we were playing. It was our first show with on the Shaggy tour in Tennessee, and our guitar player Toby had been out on the bus. He was fully painted and ready to go, and he was eating honey roasted peanuts. And Shaggy came off of his bus in his paint and looked over and saw Toby, and he kind of double take, you know, did a double take and looked at him. I was like, what the fuck? And then, you know, Toby threw him up the metal horns and he was like, ah, hell yeah. And, you know, it's cool because we are in talks about potentially at some point maybe going on tour with Shaggy again and doing an actual full U.S. run with him at some point.
You guys should do
And
the gathering, man. That'd be cool.
well, the band actually, before I joined in 2019, the band played The Gathering and had a lot of success with it, and then played Hallowicked in, I think it was 2021. So I mean, that stuff isn't off the table. We've been submitted for The Gathering. We're hoping that we're able to play it potentially, but of course, you know, everything's still kind of up in the air. But that is the goal because that's one of the biggest festivals in all of Ohio. You know, I've always wanted to go to The Gathering myself just to be there and to check it out for myself. So the idea of
I
getting
want to
to go
go.
play, Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it'd be really cool to play something like that because again, I mean, like I've been a fan of ICP since I was a kid, and of course, I fell away from it for a little while, and then with us going back out on tour with them, especially watching Shaggy play all of those songs that I grew up with, it was like, whoa, this is so much cooler than I even remember. Like they played Yellow Bus and the whole crowd of the Scoop Us Up. It was so much fun and so wacky and wild, and he puts on such a really good show. So we're really excited to potentially at some point try to get back out with those guys again. We absolutely love the Juggalo crowd, and we're because like I said, we've kind of dug ourselves in, not dug ourselves into a hole, but kind of have been pigeonholed by a lot of the metal community in the way that people see us as a band, and it's like, well, they do this paint thing, they're not black metal, we don't really get it, so we don't want any part of it.
Why
So
does it
we've
have
kind
to
of
be black metal though? Look at Wednesday 13.
Exactly. Like there are a lot of like more shock rock type bands like that that do really really well out there in the world. So we're just kind of still working on carving out our little niche in there, and we're looking at this next year. It's going to be mostly international stuff. I can't say exactly where we're going or who we're going with, but there are some things confirmed that we're just waiting to announce, and we're really really excited to get out there and see the whole world again. This will, be. I've only taken one trip overseas with the band. The band's played, I think it's something like almost 1,100 shows in 16 different countries, and we're
Yeah.
potentially looking to add more to that, and potentially even, and me, get out and see some more of the world.
Dude, I'm
Explore some
proud
of
of
the
you because I
wild
remember
places.
I'm proud of you because like I remember when you was just this local musician. Now you're like out there, you're seeing the world. Like I'm proud of you, brother, and I'm glad that you came on here. I would love to see you guys with Body Count or like Psycho Stick.
That's kind of funny because those are two bands that also we've talked to before, and bands that are very aware of us. And there's like I said, there's lots of moving pieces behind the scenes and a lot of stuff being worked on. Our management is with EMG. Our manager is actually. Mark from the band Misery Index. He's a great manager. He's been helping us out with a lot of stuff. And then our booking agent is, of course, Keith, our vocalist. So there's a lot of stuff being worked on that, we've got a lot of really cool opportunities coming up in the next year. And we're really, really excited to get out into the world and show everybody our weird, disgusting, bloody, organ ridden version of what we call death metal.
I want to see you guys because you guys seem pretty fucking cool.
I definitely think so. I was a big fan of the band before I joined. The Breathing Process, when I was still with them, we got to tour a big part of the U.S. and Canada with them in 2019, and I had the absolute time of my life. I loved all the guys, fell in love with the band itself, and the imagery. And the imagery of the band has only really excelled since then, and really become even more kind of refined in a way, to where it's like, okay, like because it used to be just kind of like body parts and like bones and like old animal skulls kind of a thing, and along with the paint. But we've really really honed in on exactly what we want to be and what we want this band's imagery to actually look like. And now that we've done that, we're really really going like full balls to the wall, like hammer down, let's get this shit done. We're working on a new album right now, and we're taking a little bit of a different turn. It's still metal, it's still heavy, but we're trying to push more into the kind of new metal sort of genre with it, because we're all huge new metal fans. We're all really really excited about the producer we have for this next album coming up. He's worked with a lot of new metal bands and even some death metal bands, so we think that we're going to get a really good product out of him, and we're really excited to start working with him here really soon.
Dude, there's nothing wrong with evolving like that. I think some of the best bands in history evolve over time. Because I was listening to a band there for a while and they were kind of heavy, like a Slipknot kind of style. And then they went pop and people were freaking out about it. I'm like, why are you free? They're musicians at the end of the day. They're,
Yeah,
Like they don't
Well,
need.
yeah,
You're not writing for the people. You're writing for yourself, and if the people like it, they like it.
Yeah, yeah. You look at like a band like Bring Me the Horizon, for instance, or Asking Alexandra. Either those bands started as metalcore and deathcore bands, screaming and playing breakdowns, over melodic riffs, and now they've completely changed to the point they still have that material, of course, that they can play if they want to, but for the most part, they are not those same bands anymore, and their popularity has skyrocketed because of it, and they've got so many more opportunities available to them. You hear a lot of talk about, selling out and changing this or changing that. No, you sold out. You're just trying to get paid. And you know what? At the end
Bro,
of the day, we're all just trying to make a living doing what we've all dreamed of.
let's
And
be
that's
honest
what it
though. People will bitch about you changing, then they'll bitch about you not changing.
Exactly. One of the best examples I can give of that is a band like Unearth. Unearth has been one of my favorite bands since I can remember, and they still are. Their new material is absolutely amazing. But it was right around the time of their album, from I think it was called From Dark to Light, or the Light in the Dark, something along those lines, where a lot of people were like, it sounds like them, it's cool and all, but like, when are they going to stop writing the exact same album over and over again? Well, but then if they went and they changed their sound, y'all be bitching about how they're not the same band anymore. Like,
Mhm.
what do you people really want? And that's one of my major gripes with like the entire metal scene, is it seems like people just want to be mad about stuff. They just want to be angry about what they don't understand, and what it just doesn't click with them. They don't get it. And that's fine. You don't have to get it. It's not for you. And that's completely a-okay, which is another reason why we've been digging so heavily now into like doing punk tours, like with Green Jello, for instance, or doing rap tours like with Shaggy and them. Like those are really cool opportunities, and these people that hear us play, they seem to really enjoy the music. They seem to really enjoy the imagery. So like, why in the world would we go back to the slog of trying to go out with these heavier metal bands that just don't seem to like us anyways? I mean,
Mhm.
we all love death metal. We all love the metal world. It's our genre. It's one of the things that made us the people that we are today. But after you get hated on so much, it's like, well, fine, okay. You guys live over here in your weird little bubble, and we're going to go outside the bubble, and we're going to fuck around and see what happens.
To me, music is a universal language, and it is a way to communicate with people how you're feeling or your own thoughts or whatever. And if you discredit one band because they're not whatever, you're discrediting your ability to learn new information, because music is a channel of information.
Yeah, yeah. Like me, for instance, I used to. It's only been like in my
Okay.
last few years of life that I've really kind of dived into like other styles of like more melodic types of music. I've always listened to power metal. That's always been my number one thing. But like a band, for instance, like Electric Callboy. Electric Callboy is one of my favorite bands in the world. And it's literally, if I could describe it, it's like somebody took the Backstreet Boys and mixed it with techno and deathcore. And it is one of the most fun things I've ever heard my entire life. And like 10 years ago, Dan would have hated it and thought it was stupid and hokey and cringy and all this other shit. But dude, me right now sitting here as a little bit of like an older, more mature man, I absolutely fucking love it, because I just want my music to be fun. I want my music to be fun and exciting. I want it to be exhilarating, and I want a show. I don't just want to go and watch the exact same fucking deathcore dudes put on fucking jeans and a t-shirt and play breakdowns at me for 45 minutes while some dude gurgles as hard as he can into a microphone. That's
See,
cool, and I still appreciate that, but like, put on a show.
that's
Change it
my
in some
way with
stage
that's
clothes.
my
Like, do
way with
something more
Guar.
interesting.
That's how I am with Guar. People are like, I don't understand it. I'm like, if you knew the creativity behind the lyrics, the storytelling, and the show, you would understand.
Yes. Dude, Gwar is one of my all-time favorite bands. I fucking love those dudes. And you hear all the time like, oh, Gwar's music is horrible. If it wasn't for all of the shock rock stuff, they wouldn't do anything. I was one of those weird kids that I had actual Gwar albums and listened to them. I even had some of the old VHS tapes, like Phallus in Wonderland, where Otis Arungus lost the cuttlefish, and he had to have Sleazy P. Martini help him find his dick out in the fucking universe. Like it's so fucking cool and interesting. And that's what I like in my music. I want things to be fun. I want them to be interesting. I'm so tired of this weird little status quo that we have where things have to fit exactly into this weird cookie cutter idea of what your particular subgenre is. And if you deviate from that, you're a sellout or you're
Bro,
lame or you're cringe or whatever.
To be honest, though, sorry I keep interrupting you.
No, you're good.
We're kind of running a little low on time. I just want to get
Yeah.
You say that things that go against the norm most people hate, dude. Some of my favorite things are the things that went against the norm. Like Motley Crue's album with John Corabi is one of my favorite albums by that band. Uh, like I, I can name a bunch of albums that are my favorites that's not the normal. Like Iron Maiden, I loved Blaze Bayley. I loved his albums. Most people fucking hated them.
Mm-hmm.
Ozzy Osbourne, I love his new albums. People are like, I hate when he worked with Post Malone. It's Ozzy being Ozzy. Ozzy evolved throughout his career. But anyway, anything you want to promote in these last 5 minutes and how to find you?
Definitely, of course. Look us up. Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora. If there is music out there in the world, we are definitely plugged into that somewhere. The name of the band, of course, is the Convalescence. We are a very weird, gross goth paint band that puts on way too much fucking blood, and then we'll sling it all over you and potentially even shoot you in the face with our awesome blood guns. All of our upcoming tour dates, ticket links, everything is all on our website. That's tconband.com, tconband.com. Pretty easy, pretty simple to find. And we keep it updated pretty regularly. All of our tour dates we've announced are on there. We're on all social media platforms from TikTok to Facebook to Instagram. And just, before you judge us on how weird we fucking are, come out to a show. Come check it out. Let us scream and gurgle at you for a little bit and throw some weird bloody shit at you. And if you don't like it, don't come back. If you love it, come tell us how much you love it. Smoke a joint with us. Talk to us. We love meeting our fans. We love meeting the people that are into the music and into our really weird, like, particular little sect of our musical world that we play in.
And if you guys need that link, I am going to add it to the description on Spotify and YouTube so it's easier to find once this episode posts. So you don't have to worry about all that, Dan. Just send me all the information that you need. I appreciate you coming here. You're more than welcome to come back on whenever, dude. I just love talking.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back. It's been a great conversation, and it's been great getting to see you again, Mike.
Good seeing you, brother. Much love. You can stick around if you want. The studio's still going to be open. I just got to cut this off. Love y'all. And as always, live long, rock hard.